When Jesus went out and found his disciples, the first one he found was a man named Simon. And we come to know Simon more than his other disciples. Now, the Lord called Simon Peter, and Peter translates to the rock. And we know that Jesus knew this translation because he said, "Upon this rock I shall build my church." And I'm not the first person to call attention to this because the Holy Roman Catholic Church traces its papacy. It considers its first pope Peter. Now, Peter, what the other things we know of Peter is written both in Luke chapter 4 and Matthew chapter 8, that Jesus went to Peter's wife's mother and cured her of a fever. In fact, he's the only disciple of Jesus that we know was married and had a wife. Now, that carries obvious controversy in some ways when you consider the Holy Roman Catholic Church, the way it's practiced now, and the way it was founded by Jesus. Now, I haven't done all this to try and create controversy. The controversy is already there for the Holy Roman Catholic Church. I'm trying to do what the whole dispute, or a big part of the dispute between Protestant faith and the Catholic faith is over. Some people say that the Pope is the voice of God and Christianity upon earth. That is the purpose of the papacy. And let me correct that. Some people say that the Pope is the head of the Christian church, the living head of the Christian church. Whereas some Protestant perspective states that Jesus, the living Jesus who was resurrected, remains and always will remain the head of the Christian church. Now, my ancestors had already picked their side on that before I was born, and I was born into a Protestant home, which I have neither right to be proud of that or not, because it happened for me. So, but I do feel I was born on the right side of the fence on that dispute, but I don't want it to be a dispute. And I know that Jesus didn't want the dispute so much. Although Jesus says himself that he came to bring controversy into the world, disputes between mothers and their daughters and siblings, but I think ultimately, he meant the healing of those so we can get into the wounds and heal them. That it can only be done sometimes through a dispute, and that's what I hope the outcome of this comes to be. Now, Paul, on the other hand, says in his writings that he tells the people when he goes out to preach that he would prefer that they be like him in that he is married to the church, not to a spouse. But seeing that some people found that too hard of a burden to bear, then he said to them, well, then by all means take wives. So we have that all in old writings, thousands of years old. Well, over 1,000 years old at the very, very least estimation. Now, another thing about Peter, since Peter is the rock, nicknamed the rock, another thing we know about the rock is that the rock carried a sword. And there's never any writings about Jesus himself carrying a sword, but when they came to arrest Jesus, Peter drew a sword and cut off one of the soldiers' ears that had come to get him. But Jesus told him to put his sword down. Now, Peter, who was loyal to Jesus, would have never had the sword on him to begin with had it been the commandment of Peter to, had it been the commandment of Jesus for Peter to not have the sword, period. And I consider that, in this day and age, pretty relevant. And I got to say, in my personal experience, the people I know who have guns and have gun collections, I'm not afraid of them. Now, I'm not saying that's everybody's experience, but the people I've known who've had guns have, thus far, thank God, been responsible gun owners and some of the most trustworthy people I know. So, anyhow, for what that's worth, maybe not a whole lot. It's not wholly, my experiences are not holy doctrine, but what is Holy Scripture? I'll read from here. This is reading from the book of John, chapter 15. And it's concerning a man who was blind, but Jesus cured his blindness. Now this man went out after he was cured, and was taken to the Pharisees, because people didn't understand how this man who was blind could now see. Then again the Pharisees asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay upon my eyes, and I washed, and I do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was division among them. They say unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him, that he hath opened thine eyes? He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him, that he had been blind, and received his sight, until they called his parents, the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, Is this your son, who ye say was born blind? How then doth he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know not. His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but by what means he now seeth, we know not. Or who hath opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him. He shall speak for himself. These words spake his parents, because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. Therefore said his parents, He is of age, ask him. Then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, Give God the praise. We know this man is a sinner. He answered them, Whether he is a sinner or not, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. Have a nice day.